Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez here along with...
And Doug.
And we are talking about a bunch of different things tonight. We start off with making each other feel really, really old. We do a little movie trivia. I'll ask the question here right now for anybody who's listening. You get the answer later on. What movie opened today? This is August 8th as we're recording this. What movie opened on August 8th, 38 years ago? Don't cheat. Don't go to Google or IMDb. Ask yourself, and then listen to the episode and see if you got it right. From there, we go into a bunch of other different trivia, other movies, other nostalgia for films. I bring up movies in my new workplace and get a pretty good reaction to find out what people are into and what people have been watching as they grew up. And then from there, we jump to a couple of different things. I'm trying to remember where we left from there. Past the movie talk, what did we do?
We complained about Amazon.
That's true. Amazon, I brought up the Caped Crusader, the new Batman animated that's on Amazon from Warner Brothers Discovery. The evil of Amazon as far as the convenience and trying not to abuse it too much, but let's face it, most of us do. And then from there, we, excuse me. From there, we also jump into Deadpool Wolverine, as Doug recently went to the theater to go check it out, and we get his thoughts and some more tidbits here and there. My voice is going away now. I apologize. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us over there on the various different sections: games, comics, movies, TV, wrestling. Check us out over at Rabblecast.libsyn.com, where the show is always uploaded. Check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Rabblecast. Send us a tweet at Rabblecast. Check out the Rabblecast Facebook fan page. Email us, rabblecast@gmail.com. The one question we posed later in the show was, let us know your thoughts on Channing Tatum as Gambit in Deadpool Wolverine. At this point, you should have seen it, so I'm not going to even say spoiler. Screw you. And then, as always, follow us, rate us, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and just let everybody know what you're listening to. Write us a little review. Hit the 5-star button, hopefully, because I'm hoping we're entertaining you. So at the very least, take us on the go. Anything else, sir?
Nope.
Okay, at this point, we both got to use the bathroom, so let's get into it. Enjoy the show. Take it away, sir.
Well, here we are on the Rabblecast. How are you doing, Eric?
Good. Aside from a few technical issues here and there, not too bad, all things considered. Getting ready for the... Oh, this is kind of like... Let me ask you something real quick.
Sure, shoot.
Do you like it when you listen to a podcast or to a show, whatever the case is, and they date or they use references to date the episode or the show itself? Like I was about to mention the tropical storm that's coming up the coast. And I'm thinking to myself, by the time this comes out, that tropical storm will be dead and gone. Like it'll have hit us and left whatever remnants it's going to leave, and then it'll be an afterthought. But I'm thinking to myself, like, why would you mention the damn storm? I don't know. It's just one of those things where you like leave a little artifact, a little reference. You're like, that was not necessary sometimes, but whatever.
It depends on the podcast I'm listening to. I do appreciate a lot of references as to what I'm listening to. I mean, they're not necessary, but I mean, generally, if they put something in, I don't really give a shit, to be perfectly honest with you. It's all good.
Okay. It was just like a throwaway moment. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I don't have to mention the storm. For anybody wondering, now since I've mentioned it twice, Tropical Storm or Hurricane Debbie, I believe it's called, is coming up the coast and has been pushing a lot of moisture up in our area. So everybody's talking about flooding and the rainfalls, and everybody's getting prepared for the possibility of tornado warnings tomorrow, which is kind of fun. So, but we'll see how that pans out.
No, tornado watches.
Watches. Thank you. I always get the two conflated.
Trust me, if we have tornado warnings, we got problems.
Yeah. Well, they say they bumped it. And here's the thing I was reading last night. I follow one of the meteorologists from NJ 101.5, Mr. Zarro, I believe his name is. Okay. And as he does his usual reports and he gives the updates and whatever the case is. And he said that they had bumped up the watch by 5%, which for Jersey is pretty significant because in the past there was little to none. So the fact that it's getting bumped an additional 5% to what it was additionally or previous to that, I don't know off the top of my head, but he's been making his reports and updates. And I've been, morbid curiosity. I've been following along to see what's going on, but it seems like we might not get as bad of a storm in our area at the very least. And Jersey might just bypass it just slightly. So it might just fall to the west of the state as far as the higher totals. So we'll see. But
which is west of the state of New Jersey is where I am.
Yes.
So I'm not as terribly concerned around my area. We're not super tornado prone out here. We have enough mountains and valleys where it makes their formation a little less likely to happen, but we still get them from time to time. Usually in the area where I am, I'm kind of nestled up against a nice mountain range. It's literally, if I walk out of my place and like go a few feet off to the side and look across, I can see like the mountain range. It's no more than like maybe a mile away from me tops. So I'm not super concerned about it. Plus my apartment is not on ground floor, so I'm not too worried about flooding or anything like that. It's going to be wild because this is the last few days we've had the most rain we've had in months at this point. So it's pretty bonkers around here right now. What's going on? But then again, that beats the hell out of 95 fucking degrees.
Exactly. So. Yeah, because again, as I'm working through past episodes, I was looking at the one episode where you and I had started it, and where the file and the recorder pretty much crapped out because of the heat. So I was like, wow, okay. And it was on, I think, one previous episode to that, which I believe just went up, 656, I want to say it was, where there was another instance where the recorder had cut out, but I didn't realize it as we were doing it. But it was like very brief, very negligible. So, yeah, no, as far as that's concerned, I'm loving the fact that I wake up, it's like in the mid to high 60s, and it's a little bit more comfortable. So I'm like, all right, this is cool.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting close to, I saw a meme somebody put up where they show Dr. Loomis from Halloween. And he's like staring off into the distance, and he goes, when you know it's August and you're just a few months away from fall. I'm like, oh yeah, Halloween's almost here. So I was like, okay.
And Halloween, as far as I'm concerned, Halloween season starts a week after Labor Day at this point.
That's a fair assessment. I know, and I can tell you this because we went recently. The Spirit Halloween store openings have already started happening. In fact, I believe it was, if I recall from what my son was telling me, my eldest was going nuts because, August 1st is Egg Harbor, the flagship store. They're going to be opening up. And sure enough, once all the YouTubers and the different channels were covering it, he was telling me that I had to keep a lookout. Now there's a Spirit Halloween just like minutes away from us this time, and it opened up that same weekend. So yeah, all the different stores, if anybody's out there looking for costumes and different things, whatever the case, decorations or animatronics, they're popping up left and right. It's funny because if you go on Google, there's like multiple listings of coming soon stores and stores that are permanently closed because, well, they're opportunistic and they look for, I'm sure, lower lease options. So I think the one in Bridgewater or the Somerville Circle at this point, I know I'm speaking locally, so bear with me for anybody listening. There used to be one, I can't remember what shop it took up. It was down by Pier 1 Imports. It was there for a few years, every time the season rolled around. And then recently, as of last year, they took over a spot that used to be a Modell's that went out of business. And then,
R.I.P. Modell's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like those. Yeah.
And
Sorry.
no, that's all right. And from there, we were going back to double check it, and it looked like there was no movement in that spot. It's still open over there in the circle. And then recently, as I was online looking for hours for the one that's near us, I saw that they will be opening up another Spirit Halloween in that same location, but now it's going to be in the what used to be the former Rite Aid. So
Oh.
I'm guess they go by square footage, whatever's going to cost less, whatever they can use, more beneficial to their displays. I'm like, okay, so at least there's going to be another one out there, and I think there's like at least 3 or 4 within like a 15-20 minute ride from us. So they're out there. They've spread out quite a bit.
Well, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Hell, they have their own movie, for God's sakes.
You're right. I still haven't seen it yet, mostly because my son doesn't want to watch it. But I might actually sit down one day and check it out. I mean, Christopher Lloyd's in it. At the very least, it'll be entertaining for him alone. So
Yeah, I figure it'll probably be like a junk food movie.
exactly. So one of these days, we'll see what happens. I do have a little moment in "Fuck, We're Old." If you like to,
Usually, I'm throwing these at you, so I can't get mad. What do you got?
I know, and this one when I heard it today, I was like, "Oh yeah, I gotta inflict some damage on Doug today." So today, as we're recording this, what's today? The 8th of August.
You're correct.
Today is the 38th anniversary of a movie involving a bunch of kids going on a coming-of-age story.
Let's see, 38 years ago, so that would be 19... So 30 years ago was 1994. 8 years before that was 1986. What came out in 1986? Goonies was 85.
Oh, you're good.
Monster Squad was 87.
Mm-hmm.
Bloody hell, what was it? What was it?
I'll give you a hint. There was a pie eating contest.
Oh, Stand By Me.
Yes. So this popped up on social media, more specifically on Facebook, where one of my brother's friends had mentioned it, and like it's one of those like, oh, don't you feel old now? To which I'm like, oh, I can turn this around very, very easily on the guy. And I said, okay, I bet you're probably older than what Richard Dreyfuss was when he filmed that role. Did a quick Google search, went over to IMDb, looked up Mr. Dreyfuss's age, went back and discovered, and I updated, and I said, Richard Dreyfuss was 38 when he filmed that role. So let's conservative say that he was 37. He's currently 76.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got one of those like hugging care emojis. Because the guy in question who posted this, he's I would say about 7 or 8 years older than I am. So that puts him clear in his 50s at this point. So I'm sure right now he's probably feeling like, oh, fuck. When you're older than Richard Dreyfuss was in the 80s. I mean, he looked old back then.
Richard Dreyfuss, the only movie I can think of that, or the only 2 movies I can think of that he looked young in are Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Jaws. Every other movie, he looked like he was like 49.
Yeah, it always seemed like, I don't know if it was Hollywood or just the way they did his hair and makeup, but to me, he always looked like an older adult. So it was always confusing when I saw him back then. And I would agree. Even the one movie, Stakeout with Emilio Estevez.
Okay.
When the love interest, the subject that they're supposed to be staking out, when that character falls in love with him, I'm like, why is she falling in love with him? He's old. I mean, Emilio was the younger guy. He was like the heartthrob kind of thing going on back then, because he had a bunch of movies himself. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is just how they wrote it. I mean, weird, but okay, maybe she just has a thing for older guys. I can never wrap my head around the fact that it was Dreyfuss who was getting the older lady. In fact, now that I think about it, if you go back to that film, I don't remember when it came out off the top of my head, but
Stakeout, I think that was like 88, 89.
That sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
But if we
and
swapped, the roles, I think it would make more sense storyline wise. Like if the younger guy was brash and stupid, made a move on the subject they were staking out, and then the older guy was like trying to cover up or trying to like guide him, like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. It's kind of stupid. Whatever the case is, I don't know. I think that would have played out a little bit differently.
Was there a sequel called Another Stakeout?
Yes, there was.
Okay. And wasn't there also a movie where instead of it was a similar theme, but instead of Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez, it was Chevy Chase and the fuck is that actor's name? He played Grissom, the crime lord, in the first Batman.
Martin Landau? No, not Martin Landau. Palance.
Not Martin Landau. Jack Palance. Holy shit! What the fuck am I thinking of? I'm sorry. Then again, you know what? This show is a fucking clusterfuck usually anyway. Shit. I refuse to be on any podcast that's actually organized. That's a personal rule of mine.
There you go. So yes, to find out that Mr. Dreyfuss is 76 currently, and that he was, 38 years ago, he was 38 himself. I thought to myself, wow. I'm debating with myself now if I want to show my son Stand By Me or not, because I was around his age, he's currently 8, is when I saw a lot of these different films where, like, you know, mature themes or coming of age stories. And the only thing for me now, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I could show it to him for, you know, or I don't know if archival is the right word for it, or just, you know, nostalgia for me. But I'm like thinking to myself, like, does it really hold up for somebody his age at this point? And he's so inundated with video games and tablets and YouTubers and Roblox that I'm looking at myself, would Stand By Me even like register on his radar if I show it to him? Like, would the whole idea of the body being found freak him out? Would the pie eating contest eat him out, or the leeches? I'm like, I might have to like test the waters on this one, see what happens. But I don't know.
Oh, by the way, the movie I'm thinking of with Chevy Chase and Jack Palance is Cops and Robersons from 1994.
I do remember that one.
There we go. Okay, sorry to die completely. Who cares? Whatever. What you were saying?
No, so okay. I've mentioned before that I started a new job, and I'm reveling in the fact that I am not the oldest, nor am I the youngest. I think the oldest guy that I'm working with is somewhere in his 60s, which I've worked with guys in their 60s before. You know, whether they're close to retirement or they just don't know when to retire, kind of thing. So far, everybody seems really cool, very chill. And I discovered that one of the guys that I work with is in his mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
To which I almost want to say a direct fuck you. But I decided I was going to have a little fun with it. So the other day, I just, you know, in the morning, we get to the shop, we start working, whatever the case is. And as we're doing our thing, we just have like random conversations that break out, and we just go over different topics or different subjects. So I figured, okay, let me bridge the gap between the younger guy and some of the older guys. And I look at the younger guy and I said, hey, out of curiosity, as you're doing all your research and you're talking about all these TV shows and movies, we were talking about animated shows, and I had mentioned to him the Batman, the Caped Crusader was recently released on Amazon Prime Video, which remind me, we'll get back to that in a second. But
okay,
as we're going through, I asked him, I was like, hey, out of curiosity, and listeners of the show will appreciate this one, especially for the history. I said, have you ever watched, and I looked over at the other guy behind me, who's around my age, I think he's like a year or two older than I am, and I said, have you ever watched a movie called The Last Dragon? He goes, what? No, and I've never heard it. Immediately he takes his phone out and like opens up his little list that he has. Because whenever somebody gives him a recommendation, he writes it down on his phone. And then the guy behind me goes, oh, man. Yeah, I remember that one. Didn't that have a guy, what was his name? Shonuff? And from there, the nostalgia and the trivia starts rolling out of my head and everything else. And as I'm like repeating different things, and we go on to other movies and other subjects, like the Goonies were mentioned, Revenge of the Nerds is mentioned. Later on, I mentioned the Monster Squad, like all the films that you and I have mentioned on this show, especially, or just in our usual conversations. And
absolutely,
the one guy looks at me and goes, "How the fuck do you remember all that, man? That's like, I remember the movie, but you know the premise, you know the lines, you know." Like, I'm like, there's just a lot of useless trivia jammed in the back of my head. It just lives there. It takes up a lot of space. One of these days, I'm gonna forget how to tie my shoes. I'm guaranteeing that. So it just, and I explained to him because after I had watched Deadpool and Wolverine in the theaters, one of the first things I did when I got home was I immediately jumped online and just looked on, behind the scenes trivia. It slowly trickles out after the movie is released, so little by little things will be revealed. But I'm always curious as like little Easter eggs, little tags, little tidbits, whatever the case is. And I'm sharing these with a bunch of other guys, and they're like, "Oh man, this sounds really cool," and they're having fun. And I told them, "Look, at the very least, just do yourself a favor, put The Last Dragon at the top of your list." Like all the other movies were mentioned, I think like we mentioned The Wraith with Charlie Sheen because of the prototypical car that was used for a lot of the racing scenes.
Nice reference.
Yeah, no, a lot of these like were for me, or like, "Oh, these are like good pulls." So like, it was also kind of like a litmus test in a sense, because it gave me an idea who I'm working with, depending on the way they threw out different movie titles. Mm-hmm. So at that point, like, because one of the guys, same guy who's older than I am, behind me is like, "Hey, have you ever watched this one martial arts movie?" I was like, he asked me first, "What's your favorite martial arts film?" And I said, "It's not really fully martial art, but I always regarded it as such because I caught it on the Sunday afternoon movie on, I think it was like ABC or CBS back in the day, and they would predominantly show kung fu movies." So I said, "Big Trouble Little China." He goes, "That's not really martial arts though." I'm like, "Well, yeah, near the end they get into the big battle scene, but yes, I agree, it's more like sci-fi and like action than anything else." He goes, "All right, well, what about The Crippled Avengers?" I'm like, "What?" And apparently there was a Shaw's Brother movie where like a bunch of these fighters who have some kind of disability or weakness come together and help one another depending on what their shortcoming was, and they would like band together and become this formidable fighting team. I'm like, "No, I've never heard of that. It does sound familiar, but then maybe I'm thinking of the Five Deadly Venoms." He goes, "Yeah, that was another one. That was another one. That was a good one." And then we were like, the Iron Monkey, the original, not the remake, Drunken Master, and all these other films. And we just started going back and forth, and like again, bunch of different references, just having fun. And then of course, at one point, I bring up, I was like, "You ever go to it's not there anymore, US 1 Flea Market out on 18?" He goes, "Oh man, that was great. I love that place. That one guy," I'm like, "Right, the guy who sold the bootlegs." He goes, "Yeah." And the one kid's looking at us like, "What the fuck are you guys talking about?" I was like, "Back then, you could go to the store, in this case the flea market. It's no longer there now. It's an AMC theater, long since taken over. If you want a reference of the US 1 Flea Market, at least the exterior, you could watch Kevin Smith's Mallrats, because there is an establishing shot when they go to the US 1 Flea Market. Interior was shot somewhere else," I told him. But back then, there used to be a place called Headhunters. And I believe the guy who ran the place, his name was Gene. And you could go and you could buy the latest Kung Fu films, you could buy the latest Godzilla or monster films, and you could buy the latest bootleg concert films. And he would always say, if for any reason the tape's messed up, come back. So by messed up, oh god, here I feel old. For anybody who doesn't know what a VHS tape is, it was a large plastic cassette with a reel inside of it. And when that reel, if it was a copy of a copy of a copy, or if it got dirty, or whatever the case was, the image would get fuzzy or distorted or staticky and wavy, depending on your VCR or TV's equipment or maintenance. So if it ever got messed up or you couldn't see it, or if it was too dark, whatever the case is, like a number of different factors can play into this, he would say, "Just bring it back to me, I'll give you another copy for free." So back then, cool. You could pick up whatever you wanted. So if you wanted, like in my case, would be Kiss concerts. A large number of Kiss concerts would always be available because fans would just get bootleg tapes and just share them in the community. Later on, the band would crack down, but other bands would kind of foster this idea of, hey, if the fans can't make it to the experience, they want their ticket sales, whatever the case is, but they would say, no, if a fan wants to share the tape, whatever the case is, just buy the album, whatever it was back then. But that was a way for somebody to experience the concert in their home. Now, mind you, this is the 80s, so you have your old CRT television with, minimal speakers set up. Maybe you had your stereo hooked up to the TV or something with like a TV tuner. I feel fucking old. But that was another way for people just to enjoy things. And the guy's like, oh man. And then the older gentleman behind me goes, yeah, man, we went from, what was it? VHS. We went to, CD, DVD to Blu-ray. Like it's just, shit was different, man. Now it's like all digital. And if you don't get the physical copies, once again, we're on this subject again, because it's crazy that, things, if you don't buy it on yourself, you never know if you're ever going to see it again. And the guy's like, oh, really? I get the idea that he probably watches a lot of the movies that we recommend to him while he's working, because he has his little bench in the corner. But I was cracking up because here I got like this little crowd communication going between the younger guys and the new guy, or the younger guys and the older guys, and everybody's going back and forth. Remember this one? Remember that one? I'm like, all right, cool. This seems like a cool place. All it takes is a little bit of an icebreaker, and then everybody starts having a back and forth conversation. So it's not bad.
Cool.
But yeah, it's funny as we're going through, and then I think it was today, the younger guy came back and was like, oh yeah, like I got like 43 minutes left in it. And I was like, all right, before you finish that film, let me give you one last bit of trivia. He goes, okay, what's up? I was like, before they submitted the script for that film, the computer that they had it on, they accidentally powered it off incorrectly, or whatever the case was, it crashed on them. And they lost the script. And they had to rewrite the script overnight before they had to submit it. And they had to write it from what they could remember. There was no copies of it available. It was all on the computer. He goes, really? I was like, yeah, imagine computers back in the 80s. Imagine whatever like disc or diskette or floppy they had it on. Now suddenly they had to rewrite it as fast as they could and hope they held on to like the important things. He goes, oh, that makes sense. So I was like, all right. He's enjoying it. And the trivia stuff is just more like a parlor trick for me, but it was just fun to see his reactions and everything else. So yeah, the old films being brought up back and forth. And I was like, okay, I do feel old. I'm feeling my age at this point, but I'm settling into it a little bit more than I would have in the past. So it's not so bad. But before I had mentioned the Caped Crusader, and I don't know, do you have Prime Video?
No, I got rid of it.
Okay. That's right. You mentioned it before. We were talking about Roadhouse and some of the other stuff. Jen and I want to say we've gone through 7 or 8 episodes so far. And
okay,
it's actually really, really good. Like, I'm not going to say it's better or worse than the original animated series. Obviously, the animated series like set a standard. When that one came out, that was around the time that the movie Batman Returns came out, with Michael Keaton, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Danny DeVito playing Batman, Catwoman, and the Penguin. This time around, I want to say the beginning idea of this one came around when Matt Reeves did The Batman with what's his name? The guy from Twilight. I can't remember his fucking name.
I know who you mean. Twilight the Vampire. Who
yes,
cares?
Mr.
Yeah,
Pattinson. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So once that movie came out, apparently Matt Reeves had a bunch of different ideas that he wanted to expand the universe. Because let's face it, that's what it is nowadays. If you're going to have any kind of a movie or any kind of a franchise, the idea is expanding the story along different lines of media. And in this case, he wanted to do different TV shows. He wanted to do different series. And some of the different ideas were a GCPD Central, loosely based around the comic, and pretty much just showing the cops and, what it is to try to be a good cop surrounded by corrupt cops in Gotham. That was supposed to be a series that was going to be developed for, I guess, Max, but went away after a while. The Penguin series, which is still moving forward with Colin Farrell, that's still going through because apparently Mr. Farrell likes to wear the Penguin makeup and likes the fact that he's playing somebody that looks nothing like him. which is fun. That's like one of the characters that really stood out from that film. If nobody's ever watched it yet, just go check it out. It's been a while at this point, so I imagine most people have watched it who wanted to. And then the other one was apparently Caped Crusader, which was going to be a return to the animated style, the noir style of the old animated series. Excuse me. And for the first few episodes, mind you, it's TV-14. And they make some changes here and there. It's a whole new universe. So it's not the animated series revisited in, like, we're going back to the old neighborhood or whatever the case is. No. There's a new penguin. In fact, instead of Oswald Cobblepot being the penguin, it's Oswalda. It's a female penguin. Which at first was a little like off-putting, because if you're a longtime fan of the Batman stories, you're just like, oh, Penguin's always been a guy. What the? Okay, this is interesting. But still, a gangster, still running things on his or in this case, her territory. Still has the Iceberg Lounge. Now it's on a ship, like an ocean liner out to sea in the Gotham Bay. And all these like different things where she now has sons, but one of the sons has like turned on her and is talking to the cops. So like in the very beginning of the episode, this is a slight spoiler, but just to give you an idea of the tone of the show, when she figures out one of her sons is turned rat, puts her son in a clothes trunk and throws him in the water. It's like, I look at Jen, I'm like, okay, TV-14. that's flat out murder that just happened. In the second episode, you see a couple dead bodies. Nothing like outlandish or crazy, but like Batman comes across two bodies under floorboards, and they're just laying there, staring straight up into the ceiling, and you see like a spider crawl across one of its eyes. So like, all right, this is all animated, so it's nothing gruesome, but wow, dead bodies being shown in a Batman cartoon. Okay, TV-14. That idea of this, it's taking a step further. It's still noir, it's still detective in its feel, but they're not afraid of pushing the boundaries a little bit more. And granted, this is on Max. It's not on WB Kids or whatever it was back in the day. So they are taking a little bit more mature approach to it. So far we've seen Penguin. So far it's a new origin story for Clayface.
Okay.
Harley has been revamped, not just in look, but also they played with her. I told Jenna, it almost feels like they took Hugo Strange and Harleen Quinzel from the Bird of Prey TV series that was short-lived. It was a live-action series on the... I don't remember if it was the WB. I think it was the WB back then, not CW. They took those two personality types and put them together. Because Harley, at this point, when she meets, she's still a therapist, and when she meets with certain clients that are a little bit more high-end, when she wants something from them, she uses their weaknesses against them, but she like puts them in an extreme situation of therapy until they finally relinquish, whether it's money or property or whatever the case is. And then she uses that to her advantage. And like I said, her whole look is also revamped. I'm trying to remember some of the other characters that popped up. They play much more closer with the occult themes. So I think in episode 5 or 6, Batman actually has to battle a ghost, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
They play up the history of Gotham and the lore as far as like some of the upper crust they refer to them as far as the people who would lord over the many, the few that would lord over the many, and just use their hard work and labor to their advantage. So it's interesting to see how they're playing up with this one. And so far, I think I mentioned before, it's Bruce Timm is back. James Tucker is one of the producers. Matt Reeves, I mentioned at one point. I'm trying to remember some of the other guys. Greg Rucka, one of the writers that's there as well. It's really, really cool. Catwoman has popped up as well. And it's like her starting out as like the old style Catwoman. It's for anybody who likes Batman, I would say definitely give it a look. because they're playing with, you know, the old themes that we've been used to for quite some time. I think I might have mentioned before, Barbara Gordon and Commissioner Gordon are black characters this time around. Barbara is not a college student; she's actually a DA. And it's just the way they have these characters now interacting. It feels more cohesive, and Gotham itself feels more fleshed out because there's more perspectives to play with, essentially. So it's only, I want to say 10 episodes for the first season. I don't know if they're going to release any additional for this season. I don't even know if it's gotten renewed just yet. I haven't looked up any news for that. But for anybody who's looking for something to watch and enjoy, I was like, wow, okay. We watched the first two the one night. Next time around, we watched the second two, and then we've just been trying to like slowly consume it because we don't want to burn right through it. But other people that I've talked to, like, oh yeah, I watched all of them all in one night. I'm like, motherfucker. But they're like, I wish there was more episodes. I'm like, that's exactly why we're not burning through with all of them. We're trying to take our time with it. So, but yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. Like there were some new twists and turns. The changes in some of the characters, although they might be jarring at first, they make them work in the storyline. So I was like, okay. One of the guys I was talking to at work, he goes, oh, all this, you know, woke bullshit. And I'm like, you know, you could look at it that way, or you could say, hey, look, there's a new approach to the, you know, source material. Do you need to have another feeble, white, chubby penguin waddling around? Like the new Oswaldo, I mean, don't get me wrong, the name does not ring, you know, roll off the tongue very easily. I think they could have come up with a different one. But overall, like, there hasn't been many crazy changes. And the narrative is there. Like, you feel like Gotham is more alive in this series. So seeing all the different things happening, I was like, I hope it continues. I hope that just like Batman Returns birthed the animated series, I do hope that Matt Reeves's idea for the Batman does lend itself to more series like this. Why Warner Brother Discovery decided that they were going to cancel the majority of the spin-offs, I'm sure they're just trying to shore up their bottom line. I know they were having difficulty showing better financials this year, especially since the merger. But I'm hoping at the very least that down the line they're like, okay, let's try a few more different things and see what comes of it. Because again, licensing it out to Prime Video, that was the decision that was made that confused a bunch of people. Like, if you want to get more people to subscribe to Max, Caped Crusader would have been a great vehicle for that. Granted, it's only 10 episodes. People would have just logged on, watched all 10 in one night, like my old friend, and then they would have just, you know, canceled the subscription or maybe forgot about it, whatever the case is. But yeah, as a business move, I can understand licensing. It would have made more money for them because now Prime has to pay them. But the one thing I don't like about it is that if you watch it on Prime, there's like odd interruptions for when Prime wants to show you their commercials now. So you're just like, motherfucker.
That's why I canceled.
Because
it's like, I'm spending how much money and I have to watch your stupid... It already irritated me that if you went to go watch a movie or something like that, they would start with a commercial. But that I was like, okay, I can skip that. I can deal with that. But now it's like, oh, you're going to get interruptions for commercials? I was like, fuck you. I'm not paying you $15 fucking a month because, especially since I make it a point, I only order from Amazon like once every few months just because I try not to buy from them because I'd love nothing more than to run Jeff Bezos over with my car 3 or 4 fucking times because it's a piece of shit. But, you know, sometimes it's like, unfortunately, it's the easiest and least painful solution for certain items. But, yeah, once I saw that, I was like, you know what? I don't fucking need your fucking streaming service anymore. I mean, someday I'd love to go back and... When The Boys is done, I'll probably get it just so I can go back and run through all of it so I can see what's going on with that.
Okay.
But, you know, in the meantime, yeah, they can go fuck themselves.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm right there with you. I mean, I don't know if it's wrong to say that it's almost like a necessary evil in certain respects. Because we've all heard the stories where Amazon employees are treated poorly. I don't know the specifics as far as work conditions or the delivery drivers. But I've heard some of the myths and stories that, they have to hit certain times. If you lag behind excessively, they cut you. You can't take bathroom breaks. You pretty much, a lot of the guys have like a bottle in the truck, which they go to the bathroom in. All the different things that you can look online, just a simple Google search will bring up all these different news stories. I remember one time, years ago at this point, I was applying to different jobs, and at one point they had a maintenance tech, robotics. And I said, ooh, this sounds interesting. Come to find out it was for Amazon when they were starting to deploy the robots that would go and pick up, like they had like a tiered shelving unit. So the picker in the warehouse would get the orders or tickets, whatever the case is, then they'd stock the shelf with all the different orders and boxes. And then what the robot would do is go under the shelving unit, and it had this large platform that raised up on a screw, what's it called? Almost like a spindle that would go upwards. It would also lift the entire shelving unit, and then the robot would take that shelving unit to the next area so that the items can be boxed up and shipped out. So you can look online. These robots would like follow this yellow line, so they knew which direction they had to go to. They were programmed, but because there were so many pickups and drop-offs, like the robots would break down. The more moving parts you have, more mechanically, it's going to have more failures over time. And I remember going, I'm like, all right, let's look up some information. And that's where all the different stories about the workers in the warehouses and how things were treated and everything else. I'm thinking to myself, if I would be working as a robotics maintenance guy, you would be under the gun all the time. You'd be pressed to get certain things out. I'm like, this does not sound very appealing work-wise. And then at one point where they finally reached out to me, like, oh, you've qualified to the next step. All you have to do is take a online a test, and it's going to be done through a proctorship. I'm like, a proctorship? How's this going to be handled? Like, oh, we're going to have somebody watch you over the webcam, and then, nobody can be in the room with you. There can be no other items around you, no calculators, no smartphone. I'm like, what? You're going to watch me in my home and tell me I can't have any of my stuff around me? I'll pass. But you made it to the next step. No, you're invading me in my home now to take a silly test. Either give me the job or don't, but you're not going to take over my house. Fuck off.
Yeah, that's some horse shit.
Oh, yeah. Like, I can understand like a proctorship. Like, if you go to a class, I've done it before where I've gone to interviews and they'll have somebody sit in the room with you and they'll say, okay, here's a quick 10, 15-minute test. Complete it, whatever the case is. Cell phones off to the side, no calculators, and no talking, whatever the case is. Okay, it's like a classroom setting in a designated area for that. If you want to watch me through my webcam, you're not going to take over my environment. No thanks. And I've never seen the listing again, funny enough. So I don't know if they still use them. I'm sure they have like some form of it, or they probably outsource the job to someplace else. But yeah, as far as Amazon itself, I get it. And I try to do the same. Like, I can go to my local stores just as easily and pick up whatever I need. But if it's in an emergency, or if it's a place that I can't get to as easily and I need it more immediate, then unfortunately it is available to do that as well. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. We've gotten so lazy as far as like ordering stuff online. It's just so easy. Like, click it and then it gets sent to us. So, well,
it's also not just that, but it's also one of those situations where occasionally, if I'm looking for a specialty item that's hard to come by, it's one of those situations where I'm trying to think of a good example, but I'm failing miserably. But the point of the matter I'm saying is, yes, it's ordering stuff online. Amazon made it very easy to order online. But once upon a time, I mean, you remember, you were digging around in catalogs, you were going to multiple stores. It is handy in that sense, but it's one of those situations where I look at it this way. If there's something I need and I can go buy it locally or from an independent, or I'll even go shop at Wegmans. If it's like a food stuff or something of that nature, or a drugstore. The most handy thing about them, back when my mom was still alive, if she was if it was in between the periods when I would go to see her and she says, "Oh, I ran out of this," or like I ran out of vitamin D, or I ran out of my probiotic, or I ran out of my allergy pills, I'd say no problem. It'll be there in a couple of days, and I just go in, put an order in with Amazon, and have it shipped to her. And then like a couple days later, she give me a call. It's like, "Oh, hey, I got it. Thank you." And I'll be like, "No problem. Nice and easy." So it's not. It does have its handy points. It's just one of those things where it's like I don't do it unless I need to, if you know what I mean.
No, I get it. And the example you gave was a great one. Like that's a fantastic way to do it. Jen's done that a couple times too, where she has friends that are out of state, and when they're talking back and forth, like they're into D&D and they have very similar interests. So when they talk about certain things, it's the same thing where, oh, I don't have this, or this isn't in my area. Jen will look it up, find it, and be able to send it to them. It's convenient. So, but I think for us more locally, and mind you, I think there's at least one Amazon warehouse like 5 minutes from my house.
Okay.
So they have a huge distribution center down over here, not far from us. And I'm pretty sure they're building another one, probably like another 5 minutes from that place. So their delivery times hopefully will improve, or at the very least the work will be spread out a little bit more, where they can not badger their employees or their delivery drivers so much. But for us, it's like if you go to a store and you go to buy something, and in store it's like $5 more expensive, and somehow Amazon has it cheaper, even after shipping, or if you have Prime shipping, whatever the case is. It's like at that point, it's like, do you or don't you? You like flip a coin almost. Do you get it then, or do you just look on Amazon for a slightly cheaper price? And it hurts the local stores, because at that point they're losing out, because, well, I'm sure they're charging more for the overhead and everything else. So it's capitalism.
Hey, it was just like, dude, it was 40 years ago. Malls killed Main Street.
Yeah.
Amazon's been killing them all for about 10 to 15 years now. Some of them, it's very strange. The mall near you and the mall near me, they're both alive and well, but I know of more than a few that are pretty much dead on the vine.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast. What are you gonna do?
Well, there's the one mall that I don't know how it's been hanging on. The Phillipsburg Mall. Phillipsburg, for us, I mean, in our direction, when we go visit friends, it's like the last town before you get to the border of PA.
Oh, I know. I'm pretty damn close to that place.
And I remember when I was in high school, I was dating a girl out in Phillipsburg. And every now and then when I'd go visit on the weekends, we'd go hang out at the mall, and I'd look around, like all the storefronts, and like, we're talking like 97, and the majority of the mall was like shut down. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? You're like, oh, this mall always has a lot of places that come and go. I'm like, wow, this place like seems almost like a ghost town, like it's on its way out. And we had a friend, another friend, who lived out there recently, and every now and then when we go to visit him, he would say, oh yeah, I went to the Phillipsburg Mall the other day and I found a new shop. I'm like, oh, well, that place is still hanging on. He goes, yeah, a lot of empty storefronts, whatever the case is. It would be the same story. Like, stores would come and go, and would we walk through it a couple of times, I'm like, wow, it just feels like a desiccating building.
Something interesting did happen at that mall about 5 years ago.
Oh, what's that?
Somebody ran an independent wrestling show there.
Why does that ring a bell? What was the group? Do you remember?
Yeah, they're called LVAC, the Lehigh Valley Athletics Council.
Is this the same group that you saw over by the steel mill?
Yes.
Okay. That's why it's ringing a bell.
It rings a bell also because they've got a working relationship with some of the folks in AEW got their start there. When LVAC started running shows, they would feature, you would see Orange Cassidy and Willow Nightingale on their shows pretty regularly. And of course now they're both, working for AEW and on TV weekly. So yeah, LVAC does kind of have like some of the ashes of Jakara on it.
How so?
They use a lot of A lot of the Chikara guys, or yeah, there were a bunch of Chikara guys who still work there. They just basically it's pieces of Chikara without any influence from Mike Quackenbush, since he's a piece of shit.
Okay, gotcha. Well, it's been a while since we've
Well,
talked
he's a
about
fucking
Chikara.
sexual predator. You know, he was taking advantage of female trainees in his fucking school. Fuck him.
It's once again the slimy, greasy underbelly of the wrestling world pops up. Yeah,
Well, anyway, never mind. I'm not going to turn this into a diatribe about indie wrestling. We all know.
yes.
But no, they had, and I do remember, like, I never saw, like, I didn't make it to the show, and I remember I haven't gotten around to watching it. I'll get there, and even the show was in August of 2019. It's been 5 years. I'll get there when I get there. But I do remember somebody telling me they actually did a spot where they fought out of the ring. I forgot what storefront they were in. They fought to the next, like, across the path to the empty storefront that was, like, right across from the one that they were running the show in. And they did a thing where the guy got beat up, he went down, and then the other guy closed the gate in front of it and locked it, so the guy was stuck in there.
That's pretty good.
It's also happened in other places. I do know somewhere online that there's this really weird video of Orange Cassidy versus Danhausen wrestling in a mall, and also it's cut in with weird video of them just wandering around the mall in their characters, just engaging in hijinks.
Okay.
Yeah, so there you go.
Wow. Okay, well, I gotta go look that up and see if I can find some video of it. That's funny. Okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a perfect place for it. Like, if anybody wanted to, like, film another movie in the location in Jersey, I know, like, places out in Union or Hoboken have been used quite often, but Phillipsburg just has that area. I'm sure they could cordon off sections of the mall, and then you could have your Union teams go in there and do some filming, or hell, if they would even let you film overnight. So, interesting. Going back to the whole Amazon thing, I get it, and the idea of watching a show that, if it's a new show, like, give it a week, maybe 2, maybe even a month. Okay, it's brand new. A show like the Cape Crusader, or if it's like a new film that gets released, show your commercial in the beginning, like we were talking about before, like almost like a coming attraction. Show your cell phone commercial or your whatever car commercial, and then, or whatever upcoming premiere that's coming on the platform, and then that's it. Don't bother me while I'm watching the show. You cut away for some dumb, juice commercial or some, like, I can't even remember, because as soon as the interruption happens, I check out.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't even tell you what the actual commercial is at this point. All I know is that it literally cut off a character mid-sentence. It wasn't even a scene transition. It was in the middle of a scene. There's a break, and then we come back. I'm like, all right, that was kind of jarring. What the fuck's going on here?
Yep.
I think I mentioned it a while back when comedian and actor Kevin James had released a new special on Amazon Prime. I'm like, oh, I haven't heard Kevin James in a while. Let me check out his stuff. Maybe it might, be better, or remind me of some of his older material. I watched it in at least 2 or 3 commercial breaks in an hour-long comedy special. I was like, wow, that just screws him royally. Like, for an hour, that's... You and I have been to comedy shows.
That's like network television.
Yeah. If you go to watch a comedian, especially a guy who has a larger set, like, it's an agreement, it's always been talked about, it's an agreement between the comedian and the audience. You're there to have a good time, you're there to laugh. It's his job to get you on board. And once you're on board, whether it's the opening joke or the premise of his entire show, you have to, at that point, like, be entranced and allow yourself to be entranced by the performer. If you have things interrupt, like in a live setting, it would be a heckler, or, somebody ordering dinner, or, oh, I didn't order this on my why does my bill have this? Like, all that shit, like, interrupts the flow when you're there live. When you're at home and you're watching on your television, to have those commercial breaks come, it just completely, like, oh, like, what was I doing? Like, I'm going to go to the other room. I have to grab something. Oh, I'm going to go use the bathroom while this commercial break's happening. By the time you come back, you're either, you might be engaged still, or you just completely forget about it. Like, I'll watch the rest of this later. It just kills the moment. And I don't know if the guys at Amazon, or at least Prime Video, because I'm sure it's different departments, I don't think they understand that. And for them, they're just like, oh, bottom line, like we want more advertising dollars. Screw you. Again, you even said it yourself. You pay a certain amount for the Prime membership at this point. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. I know it's a little pricey, but I don't know. I guess they're trying to treat it more like a monthly thing than the annual membership. But at the same time, it's just like, oh God, what the fuck's going on here? So it's in that respect, I get frustrated, and they don't know when to pick and choose. Every now and then, I'll remember hearing if we start a film or something where this says, "Oh, this feature is presented to you ad free after this commercial by such and such." Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, good. In the beginning of the show or movie, whatever the case is, show me your advertisement. Give me like your 30 seconds to a minute, whatever the case is, and then just show me the movie. It'll give me time to go make a drink or get some food or popcorn, whatever the case is, and then prepare to settle down. But if I have to get interrupted in the middle of something that I'm watching, I'm like, oh God. Imagine being in a movie theater and watching something like Deadpool, Wolverine, and suddenly halfway through, like a Honda car commercial pops up.
I'll give it time. Speaking of which, I finally saw that. But on a quick side note, and actually this is something that I find irritating now at movies. Even if you show up late to the movies, they put in so many fucking commercials and fucking trailers that if the movie starts at 4:00, it's probably not starting till like 4:15, 4:20.
Yeah. The opening night when we went to go watch it, or say opening weekend, I wanted to go to the movie earlier because I had to work on that weekend. So I figured the sooner I get home, the better, because I can go to bed and get up early in the morning. The tickets we ended up getting were for 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a little bit of a trudge, but I'll make it through. So no big deal. We get to the movie. I know the movie is ready like 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We get there, and just like you mentioned, you have your little previews or commercials even before the start time. But once the movie start time hits, I timed it. Half hour of commercials and trailers.
That's horseshit. Yeah.
The trailers I don't mind so much because I kind of want to see some of the movies that are coming out, especially some of the ones that I'm anticipating. But it was one of those things where we got there early, we got our drinks, we got our food, and I sat down. I'm like, wow, should I run out to the bathroom? No, I could probably hold it. And in that half hour, I could have run out to the bathroom, come back, no problem. But then it was like that slight...
Dude, you could have cooked a fucking steak.
Exactly. So there was that slightly uncomfortable, like, oh man, I got to hold it to the end now. Because by the time they started, I looked at my watch. I'm like, motherfucker, half hour. I mean, granted, if we were running late, no big deal. Wouldn't have missed anything. Probably would have missed the trailer. Whatever the case is, you got YouTube for that nowadays. But at the same time, I completely agree with you. The fact that they have you're a captive audience at that point. You've paid for your seat. You're there. Now you have to wait for all the previous announcements before the feature film starts. I'm like, okay, let's get to it. I got work in the morning. I want to get out of here. I already know there's going to be a scene at the end, so we got to stay until after the credits. Let's get through this. So, but if you don't mind me asking, what did you think of the movie when you went to see it?
It was fine. It was too much. The joke kind of, at a certain point, I was like, okay, I get it. It kind of got annoying after a while.
Okay.
The stuff I wanted, we got. Like, I wanted to see, it's like, okay, you have two kind of like violent comic book characters who have regenerative powers. These two fuckers need to be tearing each other apart. I love the car fight scene. I thought that was fantastic.
Yes.
I loved because I really felt like they kind of saved up a lot of stuff for it. But when they do like the fight scene towards the end of Deadpool and Wolverine versus the Deadpool Corps, and they do kind of like that sweeping shot where they're just going across and it shows them just chopping the shit out of everybody.
Yes.
Fan-freaking-tastic. Excellent. Loved it. A lot of the other stuff, I at a certain point, like, I kept getting bored where I was like, they kept dicking around so much when they're in, like, what was it called? The Void?
Yes.
there were certain parts of that where I'm like, okay, this is fucking dragging. I'll be right up front. That movie did not need to be 2 hours and I think 5 minutes or 2 hours and 10 minutes. It's Deadpool. There should be a rule that says it's a Deadpool movie. You got 90 minutes. Go. Don't fuck around. We're here to see him say like silly quips and like have like some nice action set pieces. We don't need to do all this other silly ass word shit. And yeah, at a little point, it became a little bit it got too cute for its own good at a couple of points, in my opinion. Like I said, it was fun, but that's like the first two Deadpool movies. When I saw them floating around on Disney Plus, when I still had that, I would be like, okay, I need something for background noise. These are both fun. I'll throw them on. That one, I don't know if I'm ever going to sit down and try to fucking watch it again, to be perfectly honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I remember the one commentary or the one critique of the movie was somebody said, "Oh, it's just one big meta joke." It's like, I think I mentioned this last time. Yes, that's Deadpool. Like that's all it does. That's what he does essentially is breaking the fourth wall. Granted, his fourth wall breaking has become more and more prevalent, especially since the movies have been popular. Because let's face it, it's Ryan Reynolds now. The movies are kind of like influencing the comic character more and more. But I agree. As far as the fight scene in the minivan, that's like hands down my favorite scene. Like I love that entire sequence. But I do agree with you as far as it does get a little cutesy, but at the same time, I almost forgive it. They make the joke early on when the two characters meet in the bar, and Wolverine is starting to drink down whatever bottle of hooch he's downing, and Deadpool even says, "Oh, don't go ahead, take your time. Audiences are accustomed to long run times." Like that in of itself just says, "Oh no, they know what they're doing. They're just gonna let this play out a little bit longer than usual," because at this point, you've had Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2. This joke has been building since Deadpool 1, as far as Wolverine and Deadpool coming together. So that's the only reason I forgive it. And I'm not trying to like defend what you're saying. I completely agree that at some points it gets a little too meta. Like at one point they even make some of the jokes about not Wolverine or Logan, but they make jokes about Hugh Jackman himself. Like, oh, he's never been the same since the divorce. I'm like, okay, like I get it. We're breaking the fourth wall even further because now we're going out, not out of the comics, but we're going out of the movies into the actors' real life. I get it, and everything else that they're playing with. But I feel that those moments are just there, really just to string you along to get to the big set pieces. So when they meet the first character in the Void, when they get to Cassandra Nova's, when they somehow... Here's a critique that I have. When they get out of Cassandra's fortress and Alioth, the big void-eating monster, is coming to destroy everything, the way they escape, like this big rocket robot leg that just boosts and shoots them out of there, I was like, well, that's just fucking stupid. And then I have to remind myself, I'm like, you're watching a comic book movie. Yes, it's meant to be stupid.
What was that? I honestly, I didn't really get a good look at it. Was that the leg from the Hulkbuster armor?
There's different accounts. So one said it was either the Hulkbuster armor, it just wasn't painted, or it was one of the legs from the Ironmonger from the first Iron Man movie.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yes.
There we go. Okay.
Because when you see it, it's all frosted over. So the idea was, the joke for the first Iron Man movie, Obadiah Stane never figured out the frosting issue. If you went too high into the atmosphere, it would just freeze over.
Okay.
But for it to be sitting there in a desert environment and still be frosted over made little to no sense. But again, we're in a comic book movie. So for as much as you want to argue of well, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Well, you got a guy who's a cancer survivor who has a healing factor. And then you have another guy who's got adamantium metal bonded to his bones, and now he has metal claws. None of this makes sense. The Void doesn't make sense. The TVA doesn't make sense. Let's just go along for the ride. At that point,
that's the thing, though. I mean, it's you can. Yes, we're going there, and we have to suspend disbelief, and we do that. But at certain points, it's the execution. sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, you know?
Yes.
And like I said, like, okay, I see two people who are stabbing the shit out of each other to the point where there's blood all over the damn place. And it's not going to be a problem because they're just going to regenerate their wounds. So this could theoretically go on forever. But, you know, at a certain point, I was like, cool, that's fun. I'm entertained. I just want to see big, crazy violence. But at a certain point, you know, when we're on our, and yes, I know it's the trick of Deadpool is he's constantly, you know, smirking to the camera, or he's constantly breaking the fourth wall. But when we're on our like 97th fucking see what we just did there, it's like just a touch of subtle, just dial it back down a little bit, motherfucker.
Yeah,
it was just one of those things where I think my girlfriend said it best when we went to go see it. She said it's almost like it's like too much like junk food. It's just after a while, it's like that was great at first, but it's diminishing returns, and that's kind of how I felt about this movie. So
that's don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the film. I think it's fantastic. In fact, I have yet to tell Jen any parts of the film, and it's not like she's going up and reading the spoilers for herself or anything. But because of the way it plays out, like all the jokes and all the things, like the cameos and the moments and the Easter eggs, I don't want to spoil anything for her. But at the same time, yeah, I completely agree. It's too much shtick at certain points that once you watch it the first time, I think it was even Ryan Reynolds himself who said, I don't know if some of the jokes that we wrote are going to age well down the line, but we wrote them with the circumstance in mind, the circumstance being the meeting of the two characters for the first time in the movie universe. So they just went with it. And don't forget, they also had, again, the writer's strike and actor's strike to deal with, so they were limited on what they can do as far as rewrites and reshoots. But yeah, no, at that point, they were just trying to make it work. But it's the same critique of the show, like Family Guy. Like the cutaways and the jokes. After a while, I mean, if you're a fan of the show, you're a fan of the show. Don't get me wrong. But for anybody who is watching it on a semi-regular basis, like, oh, it's more of the same, more of the cutaway jokes, the non sequiturs. Okay, I guess. And that's where this one starts to feel weak. So I understand. Like they're hitting the nostalgia. They're going to the well of all the different Fox movies. In fact, that little montage at the end where they show all the different Fox films, X-Men, Fantastic Four, whatever the case was, all those movies put together and like behind the scenes and different takes from the films all in a little video package. Like they relied heavily on the past of Marvel movies to make it all come together and give them the material that they needed to make these two characters come together. Like you said, stab the shit out of each other, not once, but twice, and then just have fun with it. So in that regard, it was fun. Like opening night, the theater that we were in, everybody was laughing, everybody was having a great time, but I could definitely see that after like second, or even if you do a third viewing, that some of the jokes won't hit as much. Some of the moments won't be as amazing because you've already seen it. The joke's already old hat. So, but yeah, again, if the critique is it's too meta, you're missing the point of the character. But as far as diminishing returns on those jokes, I can see that. Again, they just need to get you from one scene to the next. So the silly jokes here and there, like the Cavalrine joke, is still great. But we're still like, what, 3 weeks in since the movie has been released? So that's still amazing people that they pulled that off. But after a while, like, what if Henry Cavill becomes the new Wolverine, which is one of the rumors? Then, that joke will then eventually just wear off. Like, oh, remember the time when? Yeah, well, at the time it was shocking.
And I didn't even think about that. The other thing that irked me about it was and the music cues also fucking irked me. It actually sandwiched. So the entire scene where he's killing people with the skeleton of Wolverine to that fucking Backstreet Boys song and doing the dance thing.
Okay.
That I was like, oh, fuck off. That was just like, oh, here's a song you wouldn't expect us to play, so we're going to play it. that was irritating. And also, I've never liked that fucking Green Day song they played over the fucking ending. So it's just also made like a sandwich of songs I don't like around the fucking movie.
So for most people, it was nostalgia. For you, it's just like, oh, fucking bad memory trip.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, boy bands sucked, and wow, I wanted to fucking Green Day had one album I fucking kind of liked, and everything else they've done since then, I was just like, oh, fuck off, all three of you clowns.
Again, they're playing to the mainstream audience at that point, and those were let's face it, mainstream hits. The boy band song, well, the boy band craze obviously came and went, and that Green Day, I don't remember. I think was it Good Riddance? Time of Your Life?
Yeah. Yeah, correct.
That song was overused for like graduation ceremonies like crazy, even though the lyrics don't match up with the sentiment of graduation. But yeah, again, like they were already oversaturated in their own right, and then to bring them back, like 20 years later, 25 years later. Yeah. If you didn't like it then, you're not going to like it now. So I didn't mind it so much. I love the silliness of, like the opening scene where Deadpool is dancing while intercutting with him massacring the TVA agents. Like, I thought it was funny for the juxtaposition, but at the same time, I'm watching it the entire time. I'm like, wow, they're really like taking advantage of this R. Like they're just going for it. Especially the one scene where I don't even know how the fucking, like, again, you have to like suspend disbelief for a little bit, where he puts on the skeleton's claws, and somehow like some of the ligaments are still able to make the claws pop out. And he stabs the one guy in the crotch, he stabs the one guy in the ass, and they're going back and forth. I'm like, oh wow, they're going. They went full tilt, and like they're just okay. This is what we're in for. Let's have fun. So, which to me is kind of interesting because, and I know this is under Disney now, but if you go back to the first Deadpool movie, where they go back to the one scene where he's looking for Vanessa, and he goes to the titty bar. And you've got a Marvel movie with nudity. You're like, whoa, what's going on here? Well, I'm sure Stan Lee had a blast filming that one scene. But this scene, for as much as there is blood and violence and gunplay and all the other nonsense, not one titty.
Yeah, you're right. There were no boobs.
Yeah. I was like, maybe that was like one of Kevin Feige's rules. I know they do the joke of Kevin Feige said no cocaine. But maybe that was the other like silent rule, no nudity. But again, not that the movie needed it. It already had so much jam packed into those. See, I thought it was like 2.5 hours. Maybe I was like, factoring in the trailers. But yeah, the whole thing, it's fun. Once you watch the initial viewing, it's fantastic. But then, yes, I can see how easily the jokes would, after a while, start to wear on you, and if you're not into the soundtrack choices. Although I did love the story of the Like a Prayer. Apparently, they wrote the whole sequence with that song in mind before even securing the song rights. So they had
I remember you mentioned that.
Yeah, they had to go talk to Madonna specifically and show her everything else. And then the other one was during the minivan fight scene, using the one that I love from Grease. I was like, okay. Again, playing with the idea, here's this a really violent scene playing out with two characters that can heal from any wound, but they're just going to beat the crap out of each other to this one love song. I was like, okay. They understood the project. They hit their marks. They had a little fun. Yeah, they ran a little bit longer than usual. They got away with it, because even Ryan Reynolds himself has said that money is sometimes the enemy of creativity. And that goes back to the first Deadpool movie, where they had a limited budget and they can only do so much. Hence the joke of why they could only afford 2 X-Men. And in that case, it was Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead. But the one scene that I found out, and this is behind the scenes when they talk about different aspects of the movie, there's that one scene where Deadpool and Weasel are gearing up. And they have all the guns, and they have the bag of, the armory, essentially. He puts it in the cab, and Dopinder drives them over to the junkyard, and they're going to go get Vanessa. They get out, and they do their badass walk. And then Negasonic Teenage Warhead goes, "Are you forgetting something?" And it's the guns. The guns are all in the cab. And it's like, fuck. Apparently, that was done deliberately, not just for storyline purposes, but for budget purposes. They couldn't afford to do all the crazy gunplay on top of what they already had planned. So, like, we got to cut this back a little bit. Let's just have him forget his armory in the cab. I was like, okay, that's fuck. I mean, that's knowing what you have to work with. And in that case, they had a tighter budget, so they had to be a little bit more creative with their solutions. This time around, I'm sure they had a larger budget, so they had more to play around with. And because of that, yeah, there's a few things that probably could have been trimmed and done without, but the only thing I can think of is at that point they kind of earned it for themselves, and then I guess at that point it's up to the audience whether they say, "Hey, we want more of this," or "Hey, maybe we should just like cut back just a little bit." I'm more in the camp of after the initial viewing. Yeah, you could probably cut back a little bit. I agree with you, but we have the moments. For spoilers for anybody who hasn't watched at this point. You have all those characters that were finally brought back to screen, or in the case of Channing Tatum and Gambit, brought to the screen for the first time. But all right, now that you've seen it, let me ask you one final question as we're wrapping up here.
What's up?
Gambit. Did his appearance look off to you?
What do you mean by off?
Well, Gambit in the comics is a tall, slender gentleman, like athletic, but he's thinner. When they have that head cowl or that headpiece on Tatum, it made him look chubby, or at least thicker than I think they meant him to be. Is that just me?
Okay, so as somebody who doesn't really read comic books, I know he's a comic book character. My main reference point for Gambit was whatever he was heavily featured in one of the Marvel vs. Capcom games, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. It was either the first or second one.
X-Men vs. Street Fighter he was prominently in, and then I think a few appearances after that, yes.
Where one of his special moves was he threw like an entire deck of cards at you, and then they all explode at once. It's like really cool looking.
Yes.
In that game, I remember him being like more muscular looking, because that's how they draw. If it's a fighting game, that's how they're making your characters. So it didn't jump out at me at all.
Okay. I can tell you
and
that...
also, it's clearly... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I can tell you that the look from the game, it was close to what he looked like in the comics.
Yeah, right down. He had like the armor plating on his like calves for his boots or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, that weird 90s nonsense.
No.
I don't know. It just... I know that Channing Tatum's been wanting to bring the character to screen for quite some time. And I think it wasn't until... I want to say it was like 2019 where Fox at the time finally said, this is not going anywhere. We're just killing development flat out. So Tatum, who for the longest time, in his younger years, always fit, always athletic, nice head of hair, obviously 10 some odd years later, a little bit older, probably a little thicker. I'm not going to say, I'm not judging him. I'm not fat shaming him, but I'm saying he got older. So probably put on a little weight, knew he was doing the movie. So I'm sure you can find videos of him working out and getting prepared for the role. It's funny when you see behind the scenes footage of him preparing, he looks better on film. Unfortunately, in my eyes, he looks a little thick to be playing Gambit. So it's not... Okay. How do I put this? All right, so Deadpool, Wolverine. Probably the closest, even for Deadpool now in his third outing, probably the closest and more accurate versions that we've seen of the character in their costumes to date. Gambit, for his first outing live action, looked a little off to me. And maybe that's just me. Blade looked differently. Obviously, Snipes is older. Elektra, a little bit different. She was wearing a different costume from the Solo movie, not from the Daredevil movie. And X-23, has a pass because that character got the costume later in the comics, but for the most part, they were just rolling with it for live action. And the actor who plays her, Daphne Keener, just fucking kills it. So, I don't know. It just seemed weird to me. That's all.
Okay.
But I'll let everybody chime in to see what they think as far as Tatum's look. But hey, look, if that's the last time that we get to see Gambit first and last, we finally got him on the big screen. And if the other thing that comes out of this, I think it was Ryan Reynolds has been saying now that Marvel should give Wesley Snipes and Blade the Logan treatment and give him one final outing to finally close out the character in that storyline, which would be cool. But I think they have too much on their plate right now with trying to get the other Blade movie out the gate. So I think we're going to have to wait for the Snipes version if it ever happens.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
That's about it. That's all I can really think of. So, but I do think we are there, sir. How you feeling?
Tired.
Same here. But again, tomorrow's Friday, so let's look forward to that at the very least. I don't know if you're working this weekend. I'm trying to pick up some time. We'll see what happens. All right. I think
No.
What's that?
I said, fuck no, I don't work on weekends.
Oh, okay. Well, good for you. Shit. Enjoy your time.
Well, with the position I have now currently, I don't even work 40 hours a week. I show up at 8:30, I leave at 4:30, and I take an hour for lunch.
Nice. Not bad.
Yeah, fuck them. 35 hours a week. Fuck it. I don't give a fuck and fuck them.
There you go. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Eric Hernandez.
I'm Doug.
And we are the Rabblecast.